with another one of these videos where I try to discuss a difficult topic, or not so difficult sometimes, about anything that could be very important advice that really could alter someone's life in some sort of way. And it's been about a month and a half or so since I've done a video like this. Actually, I've been pretty busy with a lot of other things. But I want to continue doing this because I believe it's such an important skill to develop fundamentally in the long term across the span of your life. And so I wanted to do this topic for quite a while, but I didn't quite know how to tackle it because it's I say it's a difficult topic, but so far all of my topics, from how I perceive them, have been difficult for the most part. Just before I go into it, though, I have been continuing to read more psychology papers, I suppose you could say, more books, and listening to more lectures continually, and so I haven't stopped that by any means. And that is continuing to enlighten me, essentially, on so many different topics and so many different ideas. I've gotten a book now on Sigmund Freud. I've gotten a book on Plato, and I've gotten a book on, oh, I can't remember the third one, but I got essentially three different philosophy slash psychology books that I'm going to be delving deeper into and really analyzing them and figuring out exactly what they're trying to say in them. And so here we go. The next topic that I decided to choose was friendships. And so what exactly is a friendship? All right. Well, you can imagine it as an exchange of sorts, because it's a social interaction between another person, and it's a specific kind of social interaction because it's not the kind of social interaction that you do with just anyone. It's not like you're just going through a drive-through or you're just walking down the street. It's not just a random social interaction. This is a social interaction that's not intimate, that's not incredibly personal. It's a friendship. And so what does a friendship look like? Well, how about what doesn't it look like to start? Well, it doesn't look like something that causes any sort of resentment or anxiety or any sort of I suppose neurotic emotions, any sort of neuroticism, let's say. Because if you have that, it's not really a friendship, and that's what you should know to ignore fundamentally. And so a really good way of telling if someone is your friend fundamentally is by listening to them and paying attention, especially whenever you tell them good news or bad news, one or the other. Because if you tell someone good news and they're not your friend, they're going to try and one up you. Either that, or they're going to try and completely dismiss what you said. If someone's actually your friend, genuinely your friend, you tell them good news, and guess what happens? Well, they're going to tell you that they wish for more of those good things to happen to you. Of course, because they're your friend. And why wouldn't they want the best for you? And you do the same for them. That's what a friendship is. It's reciprocal. Just like almost any relationship in the world. And I'd say almost any relationship because there are a couple exceptions, and one of them I can think of right away would be between I'd say more specifically a mother and her child, because, well, that doesn't have to be reciprocal at all, and most of the time it isn't. And why would it be? Because it's fundamentally the mother's responsibility to take care of the child. And I say yet again the mother, it could also be the father. There's no difference, it's just that typically it's usually the mother that puts in the most effort possible, obviously for the child. And so, but with relationships, that's a completely different story, obviously. So you tell someone good news, you tell a friend good news, they're going to want more good things to happen to you. They're not going to become jealous or resentful. They're going to be happy genuinely for you and want more good things to happen to you. And I'm fortunate enough to have people like that in my life. And if you don't have that, this is one of the things that I believe I mentioned previously in another one of my videos, was that there's essentially 3 or 4 fundamental relationships or places that you want to have right in your life. And one of them is friendships, another is family, another is a career, and another is an intimate relationship. Those are four fundamental levels. And of course, there are perhaps a couple more than that, but those are the four fundamental ones. And if you don't have like two or three of those figured out, then you're just not going to be able to handle that properly. And this is I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I usually tend to do that. So whenever you're, how would I say that? Whenever you're content with your relationship, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a relationship, an intimate relationship in this case. Whenever I say that you're content with your intimate relationship, it doesn't mean you're in a relationship. It means if you're not in a relationship, you're still comfortable with that and still able to focus on yourself, and perhaps you don't want to be in a relationship at the moment because you're too busy with other things. But ultimately, that should be your goal. There's a very rare exceptions where just your career is more than enough to keep you occupied for the rest of your life. And so one of your goals should definitely be an intimate relationship. But whenever I say you should be comfortable on the friendship side, the intimate relationship side, the family side, and the career side, I don't mean that you need to have most of those. I believe no matter what, you should have a career, because already that's a catastrophe if you don't have a career. You need to have some sort of direction at all. And so if you don't even have that, that's not a fulfilling life. If you don't have family, and of course there are people in the world that just simply don't have family that they can rely on, they can't talk to. And so what do you do about that? Well, there's not much that you can do about that, and so that could just be a failing aspect that there's nothing you can do about. But there's other aspects that you can succeed in, which is why you want at least three of them to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to probably think that you're depressed when you're not really depressed. And that's actually one of the things I learned about psychology is people often think that they're depressed, but it's not really because they're actually depressed. They just have a bad life. And that's a really big difference, because people who are depressed often don't have a bad life. They often actually have a pretty good one. They're just chemically not able to see it. The chemicals in their brain are so incredibly messed up that they cannot see that they have a good life. And so, you have someone in psychotherapy, and you tell them, like, or they tell you, they're like, hey, like, I can't see anything good in my life. And you look at their life, and because you ask them, of course, in psychotherapy, you ask them, how is your life? How are these different aspects? How is your intimate relationship? Do you have one? Do you have an intimate relationship? How's it going? Are you resentful of the person? Let's talk about that. How's your career? Do you have a career? If you do have a career, do you like your coworkers? Are you being bullied at work? And so that's the second aspect. How's your family? Do you have family? Did someone recently pass away? That's a third one. Fourth one is friendships. Do you have any friends? Okay, and if you do, are they leading you down a path that you probably don't want to go down, and you may not even realize it? Let's really analyze this. And so often people who think that they're depressed but aren't really depressed just have a bad life, and they have problems. That's all it really is that they're not truly depressed because they just have problems that need to be solved. In psychotherapy, that's fundamentally what they do. And this is actually a really interesting story. And there's a very high chance that I already told this story in one of my other videos. But if you have someone in psychotherapy and let's just say they're afraid of elevators, deathly afraid of elevators, and anytime they even go near one, they start having a hard time breathing. They can't imagine getting past that. And so what do you do with them is that you say, all right, we're going to go to an elevator and we're going to confront this fear. Because, well, what are you going to do? Ignore what you've feared of for the rest of your life? That's not going to work out in the long term, because things are going to come up in the long term. And the elevator is obviously a metaphor for whatever else could be coming up in the future at some point, right? So you tell them, we're going to confront this elevator fear. And we're going to start off putting you, let's say, 20 feet away from the elevator. The doors will be closed. you're just be in front of an elevator, and we're gonna see, can you handle it? Okay, no, you can't. All right, let's go 25 feet. You're gonna find a spot where eventually they'll be able to handle just looking at it, or just being near it. And then it's like, all right, can we get closer? Let's go 15 feet. Yes. Okay. 14 feet. Yes. Okay. 12 feet. No. Okay. Let's try 13 feet. Can you stand here? Yeah. Okay. But I'm still a little scared. All right. Sit here and watch that elevator until you're not scared at all anymore. Well, now it's not such a big deal, right? Okay. Let's go closer. 10 feet. I'm okay. 8 feet. I'm okay. 5 feet. Okay, we're getting a little close again. All right, and then you repeat that process until you eventually they're inside the elevator, but the door's open. And so, and that's one example of this of why, first of all, they would be afraid of elevators, is because they're imagining things that are so incredibly unlikely to happen. I mean, and that could be part of post-traumatic stress disorder, right? If they actually did have something similar or identical to what already happened to them previously, such as imagine if they got trapped in the elevator, right? Or if they're claustrophobic, especially if they're claustrophobic, because an elevator it's a tomb essentially. That's how some people look at it, and that's not a good way of looking at it because there's a lot of better ways of looking at an elevator, and that's not at all what it is as long as it's functioning properly. Which 99.9999% of the time it's going to be functioning properly. But of course, there's still a chance. But nobody ever thinks about that unless if you're actually genuinely anxious about it and paranoid that it's going to happen. And so that's what these people in psychotherapy deal with and go through. They're anxious and they're paranoid that this incredibly catastrophic event is going to happen when nobody else would normally think of that. And so, anyways, this person inside the elevator now, and so now they're pretty scared, but you're right next to them, of course, and they're just looking around and they're looking at the buttons, look at the doors, see all of it. The next thing you have them do, of course, is like, all right, now all we're gonna do, the only thing, we're just gonna close the door. That's it. And maybe that'll be too much for them. So that means they have to spend more time inside the elevator. Or let's just close the door halfway. Let's slowly increment forward into getting over this sort of fear, anxiety that you have that you need to deal with. And so then eventually at one point, well, they're using elevators like nothing, and they've gotten past and over that fear. And often, this is actually a really interesting observation that has been done, is that whenever people overcome a type of fear or anxiety such as that, is that their relationships with other people, especially intimate relationships. Let's just say if it's a woman who has a relationship that isn't going so well with her husband, the woman will often confront their husband afterwards because she's become stronger of being able to overcome her fears, and that's often what happens. And often divorces may even happen after psychotherapy, which is such an interesting idea, but it makes perfect sense because they've developed the skills necessary to overcome their problems and their fears, and that's a skill fundamentally. Problem solving is such a huge skill, and so back to the friendship side of it. And so you tell a friend good news. So what do they do? Like I said, if they're a good friend, they're going to be happy for you. Well, what if you tell them bad news? Well, if they're a bad friend, they're going to try and one up you, and they're going to try and say something worse that happened to them. They're going to try and make it seem like what happened to you that was bad is nothing compared to what happened to them. Just essentially to make themselves feel better about their terrible life. If they have a terrible life, which chances are they do if they're trying to one up you in that way. Or at least they're a very bad friend. But if they're a good friend and you tell them bad news, what are they going to do? They're going to listen to you. And if they're a really good friend and they know what they're doing and they're mature and competent and they understand the psychological perspective behind this, what are they going to do? They're going to listen to you carefully. And they're going to really watch you, and they're going to tell you when they think you're out of line as well. They're going to try. They don't even need to help you out with your problem, but they can of course offer it. But still, at the end of the day, it's up to you if you want to have them help you. And there's absolutely no reason if someone offers help for you to not walk through that door and take that opportunity, because why wouldn't you? It's not making you any less of a person if you choose to walk through that door if someone opens it up for you. That's such a such a stupid idea that has been somewhat ingrained into our culture today, is that you don't need to be alone. You need to understand that or doors can be open and you can walk through them, and you're not any less of a person for doing so. But there are still problems you need to figure out on your own. But asking for help is by no means at all in any way a problem, because we're social creatures. We want to interact with other people. And if we interact with other people, the chances of us getting a better solution than what we would have gotten on our own is incredibly high, because two brains, for the most part, is always better than one. And that's why you're in a relationship. Whenever you're in a relationship with someone, you want to talk to them about all these different ideas, or anything really. You want to communicate to them, and you want to be honest about, here's what I want, and then they'll tell you what they want, and then you can come to a compromise, and you can figure out what you both want, and then overall everyone's happy, and everyone gets what they want, and everything becomes better. And that's exactly what you want in a relationship. And now in a friendship, what do you want? Well, you want someone to have a good time with. You want someone to have fun with. Fundamentally, you want someone who shares your interests, who shares your hobbies. That's really important. You want to have things you have in common, because otherwise, what the hell are you going to talk about, right? And I've seen that, not entirely, but to some certain extent, where there's people who are friends who just shouldn't be friends, and that's partly because they don't like one half of them, or one of the people, just don't realize that they don't mesh in with the rest of the group, and they shouldn't mesh in with the rest of the group, because that group is not a good group for them to mesh in with. And it's not that they don't fit in. Well, and this is one of the crazy things that, of course, you've probably heard so many times, is that you should never try and fit in with any group of people at all whatsoever. You need to be yourself, because that ultimately, that's how you're going to get a happiest version of yourself. But you also need to know how to keep yourself in line, and you need to know how to ask people questions, especially about, do you think that I went out of line here? Do you think I could have done something different here? And then you can learn, and then you can grow. And people often don't do that. And so whenever I say don't try to fit in, it also doesn't mean don't change yourself, because you need to change. Everyone needs to change, because nobody's perfect, and everybody has something to fix and improve on. And so these people who are in these friendships that just do not work out at all, they don't even see it, because they're so focused on one single objective. And so that could be some sort of hedonic whim to try and satisfy their short-term pleasure seeking emotion, right? They may want to vape, and so they're with a group of vapors. They may want to smoke, they may want to just have drinks. And when I say have drinks, I mean obsessively. I don't mean going to a bar once a week or something like that. That's a good hobby. If it's once a week and it's controlled, same with going to a casino, same with gambling. If it's controlled and it's not an addiction, and you're doing it properly, then yes, absolutely. I mean, you look at people who play poker. There's a large community of people who play poker. A lot of people who make great friends playing poker. But if it's not an addiction, and they're doing it right, and they're having fun with it, and they're not making their life an entire catastrophe doing it, then absolutely you can have friends in that realm. Because at the end of the day, what is poker? What is gambling? What is going to a bar? If it's done correctly, it's a hobby. It's an interest. It's just to be fun, right? Because even you see that, I just thought about this just now. You have people who are wine enthusiasts, or even just how would I say, drink enthusiasts. I don't know the exact term that you would call that, but people who just try a bunch of different drinks, especially with food, especially with restaurant foods, right? Going out, if you have a friend, or if you're really interested in going to a bunch of different restaurants and trying out as much food as possible, you find a friend who also wants to do that exact same thing, or traveling, that is going to do you an infinite amount of happiness because, well, you're sharing your interest with someone else, and that's exactly what you need to do as a human being because we're social creatures. And you're able to experience things and have a lot more fun with it because you're with someone else. You're not doing it on your own. And anything at all, I can tell you, for the most part, is better done with someone else. And but genuinely, all right. And people like this is especially how I used to think. Oh, I'm better off alone. And for the longest time, that's truthfully what I believe. Now, for some things, that's true. But for the most part, if you genuinely find someone who matches your energy, you are not better alone. You are far better if you're with that other person. And so, why? Well, because you're able to generate ideas back and forth and bounce them off each other. You're able to have fun with it too. And you're on the same type of thinking. And so, what are one of my interests? Gaming. Well, I love playing video games, and I know a lot of people love playing video games, obviously. And so, I have a friend who I always play video games with, and we both think intellectually, and so we have a lot of fun discussing how we can make our time as efficient as possible in the game. And and this is such an interesting idea is that people would say video games are a waste of time. Is it really a waste of time if you're having fun? I I don't see there's times to have fun and then there's times to work and to progress yourself forward. But having this once a week fun time for a couple hours, that that does nothing. That is it's fun. If it's not fun and it's happening once a week, that's a problem, right? Because anything that happens consistently, especially if it's daily, fix the little things that are daily. If you fix the little things that are daily, your life is going to improve significantly. But if you're consistently going through these friendships where it's once a week and it's not as good, it's not good for you mentally, psychologically, whatever it may be. Maybe it provokes anxiety into you, and maybe that's an underlying issue, and you need to get that resolved. But if it causes you pain, essentially, or causes you any sort of issues weekly or daily or whatever it may be, you need to fix that because that's your life. That doesn't change. That's one week after another until you die or until it ends, until you decide to take a different direction or until you decide to talk to the people because guess what? That's also an option. Communicating does exist and you're able to talk to people and you're able to communicate and you're able to tell them, hey, this is how it makes me feel. This is how it makes me feel is such an important and such a powerful sentence. And a lot of people don't realize that because as soon as someone talks about their feelings, now I don't, okay, how do I say this properly? Because there are feelings that are not entirely just or are not entirely correct. And so what exactly do I mean by that? Is that your feelings are just to a pretty high extent, but not 100%. If you don't feel like doing something, that may be an underlying issue. Because there are things that you're going to have to do even when you don't feel like them. That's what discipline is, right? No matter how you feel about doing something or not doing something, you should be doing it anyway. And so if you're saying, I don't feel like doing something, you're not mature in my eyes. Because you need to understand that there are problems in this world. And it doesn't matter on how you feel, that the problems aren't just going to go away depending on how you feel. If regardless of how you feel, you need to deal with your problems. But if if a relationship, and I believe this is more specifically and more deeply ingrained into relationships, if a relationship is making you feel a certain way, especially a negative way, that needs to be addressed because that's different. That's completely different. That's not having anything. That's just your feelings in that case are completely right. That's right because that's how you feel, and that's if it's bad, it's wrong. It needs to be fixed, or those people just need to be out of your life entirely. So you talk to them. This is how it makes me feel. They dismiss you, you leave. Because why would you stay if they're not going to care enough? Because then you're right back to the same thing. They're telling you bad news, and then they're just ignoring you and telling you something worse instead. So imagine that. walk up to them, hey, this is making me feel anxious every time you do this. Can you please not do that anymore? And then they tell you, yeah, well, whenever you do this, it's making me feel like this. Well, you're not going to get very far with that friendship. Let me just tell you that much, because if the fundamental structure of it is already broken. Because what happened? Well, you told them how you feel about a certain thing, and they completely dismissed it. Not only that, they made you feel worse and made you feel guilty because they started putting the blame on you, and that's a sort of a type of manipulation, and you don't want to deal with that at all. You need to get away from that person. And you think, and this is what a lot of people think, is that they think that they can't lose this person. But trust me, you can, and you should. Not only can you lose them, you should lose them, because you need to know what you deserve, and that's something that's an how would I say that? That's a anxiety driven approach, is that people don't realize what they deserve. And if they don't realize what they deserve, that's an underlying symptom of anxiety, right? Because they're cautious, and so they don't even realize, they can't even acknowledge what they're going through, or what their friends are like, or what the people around them are like. And so they're 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 completely unconscious to it, and then they wake up 10 years later and realizing, this is where I went wrong. I went down the wrong path of people. And you need to constantly be assessing every single relationship that you're in. At least I'd say once a month. And I think that's a really good standard, is that, okay, let's look. Let's think about the past month. All right. Well, here's what I did. Here's the people I spent the time with. Okay. Was I happy with people that I spent the time with? Yeah, okay. Then maybe I should just keep on hanging out with them. All right. Are we doing things fun, effectively, and not causing catastrophes in our life? Yeah, okay. Let's keep those people. Okay, how about these group of people? Okay, well, they made me feel this way. All right, let's bring that up the next time I talk to them. Okay, let's do that. You bring it up to them. All right, this is how it made me feel. Well, we don't really care about how that made you feel. Or, okay, I'm sorry that we made you feel that way. We're going to correct this behavior so that you don't feel this way anymore, because we love having you as a friend, and we don't want to make you feel that way. We want to make you feel welcome. And so that's a good sign. And so if they actually move towards that direction, that's great, and then you can continue that friendship. Or on the other hand, and this is mainly in intimate relationships, you don't see this much as friendships, but if you ever do break up with a friend, or more specifically in an intimate relationship, often the person, not often, but sometimes the person will come back to you after a few months and say, I miss you. All right. Do you miss me, or are you desperate? Number one. Number two, if you miss me, do you acknowledge what you did wrong? Or maybe it was something I did, or maybe it was something we both did. Can we talk about it, and then can we try and figure out what we need to fix? Because believe it or not, anything can be fixed if you're talking to the right kind of person. But they gotta acknowledge it themselves. They can't just be like, okay, you tell me what to do. No, I can't tell you what to do. You need to figure out what you need to do. And whenever they can't do that, and they can't acknowledge what they did wrong, don't even bother. And this is one of the fundamental rules that I follow, is always give someone a second chance, but never a third. Never give someone a third chance, because at that point it's a repetitive behavior. If something happens once, okay, sure, it happened once, but that's not convincing me for it to happen again. If it happens twice, that's an issue, and I'm not going any further than that. And that's only an intimate relationship, I would say. I think maximum you can get back with someone is one more time, because then you can see, all right, we both clearly want to be with each other. And so how do we figure this out? How do we talk about what went wrong, and how can we correct this and instill it better? And how in the future can we avoid breaking up like we did, so that we can just talk it out and then figure it out and still stay and have a healthy relationship? Because that's fundamentally what you want to do after the first breakup, and then you get back with someone. You want to make sure that breakup doesn't happen again. Because if it happens again, there's no point in trying to go try it again for a third time, because now that's just repetitive behavior. You're going over and over again. But if you're in any sort of relationship whatsoever, if you're talking to someone and they do something that you don't like, and or that causes you pain or anything like that, and it could be a little thing, it could be something that just it really bothers you, and they should know they shouldn't be doing. Well, what do? Well, you take that. All right, we're just gonna take that. We'll put it away. The first time they do it. Second time, okay, let's write that one down. Let's just put that away. The third time that they do it, then you bring it up to them, and they'll be like, and of course, then they'll try and object, and they'll be like, no, I didn't do that. Actually, then you can tell them, well, actually, it did happen. And not only did it happen just now, it happened here, and it happened here. And I'm not making this up. So either we need to figure something out, or something needs to be changed here, because this has happened. It's a reoccurring theme, and something needs to happen. So in that case, 3 tries and you're out, right? But in an intimate relationship, 2 tries maximum, and one is better. And so I believe that's just about all I wanted to really talk about in terms of friendship. This is a little bit of a shorter one, but friendship could go a lot deeper, but I haven't thought it through enough yet to go any further than that. I've just got the the forefront essentially figured out. And so thank you for listening.